March the 4th, 2026. Guys, in this morning's video, one of the updates that we talked about was the fact that Pete Hegseth had said that this conflict in the Middle East could last about 8 weeks, or 2 months, 60 days, any way you want to look at it. And that's an unusual number because it is a trigger point. And I want to go over some facts and figures with you about what we may be facing. It says, historically, several global recessions have often acted as a catalyst for both internal and external conflicts. In other words, revolts inside of a nation that no longer can afford to feed the masses or whatever, and external conflicts we're seeing both of them here in the U.S., by the way. The external conflict, of course, we know what that is, and internally, we have an entire section of the nation that hates America. But they're talking about resource scarcity and competition. Energy and food security. A prolonged blockade would turn energy and fertilizers into scarce strategic resources. Historically, competition over access to such materials has been a primary driver of interstate wars, as nations may use force to secure their own survival. That's what we're leading to, and it's coming from many different directions. Now, guys, and I think the global economy has been in trouble way before what we're seeing now, but this is really going to escalate it. They're saying as the global economy shrinks, nations may perceive that one side's gain may be another's loss, potentially leading to aggressive territorial or resource-based grabs, oil, petroleum, minerals, timber, whatever. It says the grievance model will come into play. It will cause internal instability and civil unrest. Things like high employment, soaring food prices, and inflation, typical of recessions, frequently lead to mass protest and civil unrest. Guys, in the last administration was pushing us off that cliff as fast as they could because they were destroying our economy. And it was and letting in the masses at the same time. Anyway, a state failure will cause it. It says weak or developing nations may find their governments unable to provide basic services or maintain security. This power vacuum often allows insurgent groups or terrorists to mobilize, potentially sparking civil wars. We are in this, all of these, the U.S. is, but what we got to look at is it's where it's going to start. And they're talking about, again, 8 weeks or 60 days of conflict. They're not talking that the Straits of Hormuz would be closed that long. And there's, of course, the question, well, if their navy's decimated, how are they going to do that? They have a lot of ways to do it, and they have a lot of different types of mines, guys. We're going to look at that. And that is the only thing that would do it. You could sink a few ships, and they've got a cargo ship going down already, or in some type of trouble. One oil vessel's been hit. There was reports of 11 different ships this morning that were in trouble or on fire. A lot of that reported this afternoon had been contained, but we'll just have to see. Now, listed in this is something that you and I have talked about many, many times. It's called the diversionary war theory. Internal versus external conflict. Political leaders facing extreme domestic pressure, which is on how many European leaders right now? How about Mexico? How about Venezuela? The Middle East. Just think about it. Here, if a certain party was in place, anyway, political leaders facing extreme domestic pressure due to economic failure may sometimes launch foreign military ventures, they're calling them, to unify the population, listen, against a common enemy and distract from internal problems. Guys, you know, if you went all the way to the top with that particular theory, you could say the same thing for, say, if there was extraterrestrial contact. Unify the population against a common enemy, even if it was just a false flag. But here again, they're sinking, and we talked about Macron and people like that over there, and in England and all the people in Europe. There's a bunch of goofy ones over there, leaders, just like we have here, Canada. But when they start losing control, and they cannot deal with it anymore, start a conflict that distracts the attention and unifies the population against the common enemy again. Shifts in global power can cause it. Reduced interdependence. The current global system typically acts as a deterrent to war because the cost of disruption is too high. Well, we've broken that barrier, okay? On the first, it was broken. A total breakdown in trade, like a 60-day Hormuz closure, removes this specific effect, making the use of force seem less economically costly than it was during times of prosperity. In other words, you got to do something. Even if you got to use your Navy, your military, you got to open up the straits. And it goes much deeper, guys, than just starting a conflict. But it all leads to that. Now, going back to the Great Depression in the 1930s, it says that Great Depression directly contributed to the rise of dictatorial regimes that eventually pushed the world towards World War II. Think about that. The analysts at IMF and the S&P Global have put out their current March out, or the outlook for March. It said they are closely monitoring whether this energy shock cycle, we're encountering it now, will remain a regional conflict or morph into a broader global polycrisis, where economic desperation triggers secondary conflicts in other vulnerable regions. Okay, China's not getting 50% of the oil. The price of gas in Europe has doubled. Conflicts everywhere, guys, like that. And because you're dealing with 20% of the world's oil, 80% of much of Asia's export, you're also dealing with imports into the Straits of Hormuz, guys, through there, because 80% of the food for the Middle East is imported through the straits. You know, they don't have a lot of gardens over there. It's a lot of desert and things like that. But 80% of their food comes through the straits, going north, I guess you would call it. So right now they're already experiencing shortages. We got big, high tonnage container ships stopped, and millions of dollars worth of vegetables are rotting on board. No insurance. And what can be delivered now, if they clear it, it's going to be a higher cost because the companies are adding a cost per day on the delivery of any food. So you got how much conflict is going to be occurring right in the area that we're talking about now, from Israel to Egypt to Turkey, coming back all the way around to Jordan and through all the stand nations. Guys, 80% of the Middle East food comes through there. And we haven't really addressed that. So talking about internal conflicts, then this could destabilize everything. Now, just for reference, guys, this is information, some of it's U.S. Navy, some of it's Iranian Navy, but anyway, it wasn't that long ago that Iran was showcasing new naval mine capabilities amid regional tensions. Again, let's go back to the first question. If their Navy's been decimated, how will they mine the straits? Because what they do, guys, they have much smaller boats, and they will commission even pleasure boats that will handle 4 or 5 mines at a time, and they'll run out there very quickly and lay these. It's not just floating mines that are right below the surface. Some are actually cone mines that are magnetically attracted. They've got underwater mines that are basically a missile that once it detects a metal object above it, it releases that missile from the bottom and strikes the ship. There's about 8 different types of mines that they have. And so, of course, the U.S. forces have mine-sweeping capabilities and underwater search capabilities and all of that. It's all documented. But again, this is the only thing other than them trying to, and they don't have the Navy to do that, but to try to barricade it with a bunch of sunken vessels. That would be a little harder to achieve, but mining it and then semi-defending that area from the shores and up in the mountains overlooking the straits, could make it difficult enough. By the time it's cleared under security, it could be that 8 weeks that Pete Hegseth is talking about. This is how it would happen. Mining. And this is an image, guys, of some of those Iranian mines. I think these are the type that float just below the surface, just out of a visible, just below visibility. And then some are probably deeper for subs and stuff like that. But this is what they're dealing with. Now, again, their Navy's decimated. Let me show you another picture, though. This is what happens. They will commandeer, and they have, these are basically converted fishing and pleasure boats. You can look at the center console there and the rear of this thing and everything, and it's holding 4 mines that we see. And so these are very fast. They can get in and out very quickly. It's not a big ship trying to go through there slow and do this, and they've got hundreds of these types of boats. So once the right trigger was pulled, then they could mine it very quickly. And what would that be trigger? I mean, what would be that trigger? Excuse me. It would be something like taking out a major radar system, either on shore or aboard a ship that temporarily blinded some of the area at night or something. Before you know it, in a few hours, you got it's a 21-mile straight there. But I don't know how, I don't think that 21 miles is fully navigable as far as the depth, but it's 20 miles there, and then by the international maritime law, you have 12 miles offshore. So I guess you've got Saudi Arabia splitting half of the Gulf or the Persian Gulf, and Iran on the other half. But again, that Strait of Hormuz is close enough where they could shut it down by exactly what you're looking at right here. Then we go into that 60-day cycle. Even if it's 40 or 50 days, the economic impact is going to be critical. And they're talking about, just if it's ended pretty soon, $100 gas, $100 a barrel oil, excuse me, and going $200 to $300 very quickly. And that's going to create shortages. What does that do? Conflicts, both internally, externally. What are we looking at, guys? We're looking at a world war developing because of the economic impact and other reasons, but the economic impact is going to be the driver, because it's once a nation or group of people become hungry or desperate, things change very quickly. We're watching it, guys. Again, I'm trying to look at it not just on the actual war itself, but the implications. This is a heads up, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, push the like button, and be safe.